I need to tell you about the moment I stopped breathing. Not physically. My lungs kept working. My heart kept pushing blood through my veins. My body continued its mechanical obligations to survival. But something inside me, something that had been breathing since the first night Adrian Volkov touched my face and told me I was the only clean thing in his life, that thing stopped. It stopped mid-inhale, and it has not fully resumed since. My name is Elena, and I am in love with a monster. No, that is not fair. I am in love with a man who does monstrous things. There is a difference. Or at least I used to believe there was a difference. I used to believe it the way children believe in the permanence of daylight, absolutely, instinctively, without ever considering that darkness is not the absence of light, but its inevitable companion. I believed it until last Thursday night. Until 7 words came out of his mouth and rearranged the architecture of everything I thought I understood about him, about us, about the space between love and power where we had been living for 2 years, balancing on a wire that I now realized was never as steady as I pretended it was. It will hurt you, but I will not stop it. He said it standing 3 feet from me. In the kitchen of the apartment he bought me on the Upper East Side. The apartment with the white curtains and the morning light and the espresso machine he had imported from Milan because I mentioned once, that the coffee at a cafe in Milan was the best I had ever tasted. He remembered that. He remembered everything I said. He cataloged my preferences the way his men cataloged threats, meticulously, comprehensively, with the understanding that information is power and the things I loved were information he intended to act on. That is who Adrian Volkov was. A man who could order the destruction of a human life at noon and have Milanese espresso machines shipped across an ocean by dinner because the woman he loved had mentioned a coffee she liked. A man who contained both of those things simultaneously, the way a river contains both the surface and the undertow, and who never saw the contradiction because in his world, contradiction is not a flaw. It is a feature. I met him 2 years ago, at a gallery opening in Chelsea. I was there because I worked for the gallery. I managed installations. I hung art on walls and arranged lighting and wrote the small white cards that told people what they were looking at, which is an irony I appreciate more now than I did then, because the night I met Adrian, I had no idea what I was looking at. He was standing in front of a painting, a large abstract piece, dark blues and blacks with a single line of red cutting diagonally across the canvas like a wound that had not been treated. He was alone. The room was full of people performing sophistication, holding wine glasses at the correct angle, nodding at canvases they did not understand, but he was actually looking. His eyes were moving across the painting with the systematic attention of someone who was not admiring, but analyzing. I walked over because it was my job to walk over. I asked if he had any questions about the piece. He looked at me, and I want to describe what that felt like because it matters. It matters because everything that came after, every kiss, every whispered conversation at 3 in the morning, every moment I chose to stay when a smarter woman would have run, was rooted in the way Adrian Volkov looked at me for the first time. He looked at me the way he had been looking at the painting. Completely. With his full attention. Not scanning. Not appraising. Seeing. The way you see something when you have decided it is worth understanding rather than simply categorizing. Subscribe right now. I am telling you this story because I have never told anyone. And the reason I have never told anyone is because the ending is still happening. I am still inside it. And I need you to hear it. Stay with me. Subscribe and stay. He took me to dinner that night. Not the gallery dinner. Different dinner. A restaurant with no sign on the door where the host knew his name and the table was ready and the other diners looked at him with a specific expression I would later learn to recognize as the face people make when fear and respect occupy the same space. He was gentle. That night, and every night after. Gentle in a way that felt deliberate, as if gentleness was a language he had taught himself specifically for me, a dialect he spoke nowhere else, a room he had built inside himself that only I was permitted to enter. He told me what he was after 3 months. Not because I asked, because someone recognized him while we were walking, and the way that person reacted, the visible, physical flinch of a grown man, required an explanation. He told me simply, without drama. Without apology, he said, I control things that most people prefer not to know about. I operate in a world where the rules are different. I have done things that would change the way you look at me. And I am telling you now because I would rather lose you to the truth than keep you with a lie. I stayed. God help me, I stayed. Because the man sitting across from me, telling me he was dangerous, had spent 3 months being the safest place I had ever known. And I could not reconcile those two things by leaving. I could only reconcile them by staying and believing, with a faith that now seems almost delusional, that the version of Adrian that existed with me was the real one and the version that existed in the world was the performance. I was wrong, or I was right. I still do not know. And that uncertainty is the cruelest part. Last Thursday, I found a document on his desk. I was not snooping. I was looking for a pen. The document was a file. Inside was a photograph of a man I recognized. My brother. My younger brother, Matteo. Beneath the photograph were details, movements, transactions, debts. And at the bottom, in handwriting I recognized as Adrian's, 2 words. Handle accordingly. I went cold. The kind of cold that starts in your stomach and radiates outward until your fingertips feel like they belong to someone else. I confronted him that night. In the kitchen, under the lights he had installed because I said I liked warm lighting. Surrounded by the evidence of his devotion, every surface of that apartment a monument to how carefully he had studied me. What is this? I held up the file. He looked at it. His face did not change. Where did you find that? Adrian, that is my brother. I know who it is. What does handle accordingly mean? It means what it means, Elena. Tell me what it means. He stepped closer, not threateningly, the way he always stepped closer. The way a man steps toward the person he loves when the conversation becomes heavy enough to require proximity. Your brother owes money to people who do not accept apologies. He made promises he could not keep. He used my name as leverage without my permission, and the people he used it with are now looking at me for an answer. So give him time. Help him. You have the resources. You could. I could protect him. And in doing so, I would tell every person in my network that my woman's family is exempt from consequences. And the moment I do that, every enemy I have ever made will know exactly where I am soft. They will know that the way to reach me is through you. Through him. Through anyone whose last name matches yours. Adrian, he is my brother. He looked at me. And his eyes, those eyes that had looked at me in the gallery with such complete attention, those eyes that had made me feel seen in a way no one else ever had, those eyes were still seeing me, still full of me. But behind the fullness, behind the love, there was something I had never seen before. A wall. It will hurt you, he said, but I will not stop it. I froze. Subscribe right now. Because what happened after those words, what I did, what he did, and what happened to my brother, is the reason I am telling this story tonight. And you need to hear every word. I want to describe what it feels like to stand in front of the person you love and realize that their love for you has a boundary. Not a theoretical boundary. Not a someday boundary. A right now, tonight, standing in your kitchen, looking you in the eye boundary. It feels like vertigo. Like the floor is still there, but your body no longer trusts it. Like gravity has not changed, but your relationship to it has. And you are not falling yet, but you know, with the certainty of a woman who has just heard the truth spoken in a voice that has never lied to her, that the ground is not going to hold. I did not cry. I want you to know that. I did not scream. I did not throw things. I stood in that kitchen and I looked at Adrian and I felt the 7 words settle into my body like stones being placed one by one on my chest. It will hurt you, but I will not stop it. And then I asked the question that I had been afraid to ask for 2 years. The question that lived underneath every dinner, every kiss. Every morning I woke up beside him and felt safe. Do you love me more than your empire? He did not hesitate. And the fact that he did not hesitate is the thing that destroyed me and saved me simultaneously. I love you more than my life, he said. But my empire is not about me. My empire is 300 families who eat because I make decisions that keep them employed. My empire is a structure that collapses if I show weakness, and when it collapses, it does not collapse on me. It collapses on them, on the drivers, on the wives, on the children. I am not choosing power over you, Elena. I am choosing the survival of everyone who depends on my power, and that includes you, even if you cannot see it right now. I heard him. I understood the logic. The terrible, airtight, suffocating logic of a man who has built a machine that requires him to be merciless in order to function, a machine that protects people by destroying the ones who threaten its structure. And my brother had threatened its structure. Matteo, my stupid, reckless, beautiful little brother who had always chased shortcuts and found cliffs, who had borrowed money from the wrong people and dropped Adrian's name like a credit card he did not own, who had stumbled into a world he did not understand and made promises his body could not cash. What is going to happen to him? I whispered. He will be collected. He will be given a chance to repay what he owes through work, physical work, hard work, for a period that matches the debt. And if he cannot, Adrian did not answer that question, and his silence was louder than any word he had ever spoken. I need to see him, I said. No, Adrian. If you see him, you will try to protect him. If you try to protect him, you will put yourself between him and people who will not stop because you are standing there. I cannot allow that. You cannot allow it. You cannot allow me to see my own brother. I am trying to keep you alive, Elena. And I am trying to keep him alive. We stood in that kitchen, two people who loved each other standing on opposite sides of a line that neither of us drew, but both of us could see. The espresso machine hummed on the counter. The warm lights glowed. And between us, the distance of 7 words that could not be taken back. I left that night. Not permanently. I did not pack. I did not make a speech. I picked up my coat and my keys and I walked out the door and I drove to my mother's house and I sat in her kitchen and I drank the terrible instant coffee she has been making my entire life and I told her nothing because what was I supposed to say? Mama, the man I love is going to hurt Mateo and I cannot stop him because stopping him means endangering everyone he protects, including me. Subscribe. I need you to subscribe right now because the next 48 hours of my life are the hours that showed me what Adrian Volkov actually is. Not who I thought he was, not who I wanted him to be, but what he is. And the answer is more complicated than any word I know. I did not hear from Adrian for 2 days. He did not call. He did not text. He did not send one of his men to check on me, which he had done every other time I left upset. A quiet figure parked outside my mother's house who thought I did not notice, but whom I always noticed because Adrian's protection was never invisible. It was just quiet. This time, no one came. And the absence was its own message. He was giving me space. Or he was preparing something. Or both. With Adrian, those two things were never mutually exclusive. On the second night, my phone rang. Not Adrian. A number I did not recognize. It was Mateo. Elena. His voice was wrong. Not scared. Exhausted. The bone-deep exhaustion of a man who has been awake for 2 days processing something his mind is not built to process. Where are you? I am at a warehouse in Red Hook. Elena, listen to me. They picked me up yesterday. 2 men. They brought me here. And I thought they were going to. He stopped. I could hear him breathing. The ragged, uneven breathing of a man who has been crying and is trying to pretend he is not. They put me to work, he said. Loading trucks. 12 hours. No breaks. My hands are bleeding. My back is destroyed. But Elena, they fed me. They gave me water. And the man in charge, he said something to me. What did he say? He said, you are here because you owe a debt and debts get paid. But you are alive because someone loves your sister enough to find a solution that does not end with your name in a newspaper. He said the boss spent 2 days redesigning the entire protocol for handling situations like mine because the existing protocol would have broken his woman's heart and breaking her heart was not an option he was willing to accept. I gripped the phone so hard the case cracked. Mateo, are you okay? I am tired. I am sore. I am humiliated. But I am alive, Elena. And the man who runs this place said I will work off my debt in 6 months, and then I will be released, and I will never use the Volkov name again, or I will not be given a second solution. Elena, he saved my life. Your man saved my life. In the hardest, ugliest, most painful way possible. But he saved it. Subscribe right now. Do it right now because when I tell you what I did after that phone call, when I tell you what I said to Adrian Volkov when I walked back into that apartment, when I tell you what he said back, you're going to understand something about love that you have never understood before. Subscribe and stay. I drove to the apartment at midnight. I did not call ahead. I used my key. The door opened into darkness. The apartment was quiet. The espresso machine was not humming. The warm lights were off. The place felt like a body that had stopped breathing. I found him in the bedroom. Not sleeping. Sitting on the edge of the bed. In the dark. His jacket was off. His sleeves were rolled up. His hands were hanging between his knees. And in the faint light coming through the window, I could see that his knuckles were raw. Not from hitting someone. From gripping something. The steering wheel of his car, I would learn later. He had been driving. For 2 days. Driving through the city at night, while his men restructured an entire system of consequences because the woman he loved had a brother who was going to die under the old system. He did not look up when I came in. Adrian. Nothing. Mateo called me. He was still. The stillness of a man who has been holding something so tightly for so long that releasing it requires more strength than holding it ever did. He told me what you did. He told me about the warehouse. The work. The 6 months. He told me what the man in charge said to him, that you spent 2 days redesigning the protocol because the existing one would have broken my heart. I walked toward him. Each step felt like a word in a sentence I was composing in real time, a sentence I would not fully understand until I reached the end of it. You said it would hurt me, and you said you would not stop it. Yes. You did not say you would not change it. He looked up, and what I saw in his face nearly put me on the floor. Not because it was frightening, because it was naked. The armor was gone. The wall I had seen in the kitchen was gone. What was behind it was a man who looked like he had not slept in 2 days because he had been trying to solve an equation that his world said had only one solution, and he had refused to accept that solution, and he had torn the equation apart and rebuilt it from scratch because the original answer would have cost him the only person on earth who made his life mean something beyond power. I could not stop the consequence, he said. His voice was raw, not the controlled, measured voice I knew. Something underneath. Something younger. Your brother used my name. He created a debt that my organization cannot absorb without signaling weakness. If I erase that debt, every person under my protection becomes vulnerable because my enemies will see the erasure as an invitation. I know. But the method I could change. The old method would have been permanent. The new method is painful but survivable. Your brother will work. He will suffer. He will learn. And in 6 months, he will walk out alive and free and carrying a lesson that might actually save him the next time he thinks about taking a shortcut. You did that for me. I did that because of you. There is a difference. You did not ask me to. You did not have to. You walked out that door and the apartment went dark and I sat here and I realized that the protocol that has kept my organization alive for 15 years does not account for you. It does not have a variable for the woman I love. And a system that cannot accommodate the most important thing in my life is a system that needs to be rewritten. I sat beside him, on the edge of the bed, in the dark. Our shoulders were not touching, but the space between them was so small that it had its own warmth. You told me it would hurt me, I said. It did hurt you. Yes. And I did not stop it. No, you did not stop it. You rebuilt it. You kept the pain, but you removed the destruction. You found a way to be who you are and still protect what I love. Is that enough? I looked at him, at this man who terrified an entire city, whose name was spoken in whispers, whose hands had done things I would never ask about and he would never tell me. This man who had driven through the streets for 2 nights because the woman he loved had walked out and the silence she left behind was worse than any enemy he had ever faced. I do not know, I said, honestly. Because I owed him honesty the way he owed me the truth. I do not know if it is enough. I do not know if I can live in the space between who you are with me and who you are with everyone else. I do not know if love is strong enough to survive in a world that runs on fear. What do you know? I know that when I walked out that door, I felt like I was dying. I know that when Mateo called and told me what you did, I felt something I have never felt before. Not gratitude. Not relief. Something harder to name. The feeling of watching someone you love choose the most difficult possible path instead of the easiest one. Not because the difficult path is right, but because the easy path would have destroyed something between you that cannot be rebuilt. Subscribe right now. Because what I said next is the truest thing I have ever said to another human being, and you need to hear it. I know that I love you, I said. And I know that loving you is the most complicated thing I have ever done. It is not simple. It is not safe. It is not the love I imagined when I was a girl dreaming about the person I would end up with. It is harder than that. It is messier. It requires me to hold 2 truths at the same time, that you are capable of terrible things and that you are capable of rewriting your entire world to keep from breaking my heart. And I have to carry both of those truths simultaneously, and some days one will be heavier than the other, and some days I will want to run, and some days I will look at you and see only the man who imported an espresso machine because I mentioned a coffee I liked once. Is that enough? He asked again. I took his hand, the one with the raw knuckles. I held it in both of mine. It is not enough, I said. It will never be enough. Love is never enough in a world like yours. But it is what I have. And I would rather have not enough with you than everything with someone who has never had to choose between his empire and my heart. He turned his hand in mine. His fingers closed around my fingers. And I felt something pass between us that was not electricity and not warmth and not the dramatic, cinematic surge that stories like ours are supposed to climax with. What I felt was weight. The weight of two people choosing each other in full knowledge of what that choice costs. He pulled me closer. His forehead touched mine. His breath was on my face. I will hurt you again, he whispered. Not because I want to, because my world will demand it. And when it does, I will do what I did this time. I will not stop the consequence. But I will break myself in half, trying to make the consequence survivable. And I will walk out that door again, I said. Because I have to. Because walking out is how I survive the moments when your world touches mine. But I will come back. I will always come back. Because the apartment is dark without me, and we both know it. He almost smiled. Almost. The corner of his mouth moved by approximately 2 millimeters, which in Adrian Volkov's emotional vocabulary was equivalent to a standing ovation. The apartment is dark without you, he confirmed. I leaned into him. He put his arm around me. We sat on the edge of the bed in the dark apartment, and we did not speak because we had said everything, and anything more would have diluted it. Outside, the city hummed. Adrian's city. The city that feared him. The city that ran on the machinery of his power. The city that would never know that the man it was afraid of had spent 2 nights driving its streets with raw knuckles and wet eyes because a woman walked out of an apartment and took the light with her. Mateo worked for 6 months. He loaded trucks. His hands calloused. His back strengthened. He learned something that no shortcut could have taught him, that debts are real and names are not currency, and the world does not bend for you simply because you want it to. He walked out on a Tuesday. He called me. He said, I am free. He said, I am sorry. He said, your man is terrifying and fair, and I never want to see the inside of that warehouse again. I said, good. Adrian and I are still together. I am still in the apartment with the white curtains and the espresso machine. He still remembers everything I say. He still looks at me the way he looked at that painting in the gallery, completely, systematically, with the intention of understanding rather than simply admiring. And I still love him. Complicatedly. Imperfectly. With my eyes wide open and my hands gripping the edges of a life that is nothing like the one I imagined and everything like the one I apparently chose. Some nights, I lie awake and I listen to him breathe and I think about the 7 words. It will hurt you, but I will not stop it. And I realize something I could not have realized the night he said them. Those words were not a betrayal. They were the most honest thing anyone has ever said to me. They were the sound of a man telling a woman exactly who he is and what loving him will cost, in advance, without disguise, without the pretty wrapping that most men use to hide the sharp edges of their truth. He told me it would hurt. He was right. He told me he would not stop it. He was right about that too. But he did not tell me that he would spend 2 sleepless nights rebuilding the machinery of his entire organization to make the hurt survivable. He did not tell me that because he did not know he was going to do it. He did not know until I walked out the door and the apartment went dark and the darkness taught him something about himself that his power never could. That he would rather rewrite his world than lose me in it. And that is either the most beautiful thing a dangerous man has ever done, or the most dangerous thing a beautiful love has ever survived. I still have not decided which. And that is my story. If it left something in your chest that was not there before, if you are sitting with the weight of it right now trying to figure out what you feel, then I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel right now. Not later. Now. Because the stories that come from this place are the kind that find you exactly where you are and refuse to leave until you have felt something real. Share this story with someone who knows what complicated love looks like. Someone who has stood in a kitchen and heard words that changed the shape of their world. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have walked out that door? Would you have come back? And the hardest question of all, can you love someone who tells you the truth even when the truth is a wound? Tell me. I read every word. Every single one. And the next story is already waiting for you. I will see you there.